So look at this painting by Delacroix, The Death of Sardanapalus. First notice, it's a very large painting. This is 12 feet tall and 16 feet wide. So this is a cinematic scale painting. The scene that you're seeing here is from a story that's actually from a Western author that places it in Iran or Persia in a distant past, and it's a fanciful, exotic kind of a story of an ancient king whose whose kingdom was under assault, and he knew that he was going to lose. His kingdom was going to be conquered, so he ordered all of his possessions to be destroyed in front of him in this incredible destructive fire. So he's calling all of his slaves and all of his concubines and all of his horses and his gold and his jewelry and his velvet and all of his fine things. He wants it all brought in front of him and just destroyed so that he can watch, and he can watch it all burn. So that's this fantastical scene that you see here in The Death of Sardanapalus. So the king is in the upper left-hand corner, and he's on this enormous red velvet upholstered bed where the red sort of seems to spill downwards towards the diagonally towards the lower right hand corner. Lots of nudity, lots of action, and your eyes are constantly moving one place and another because of all of the flailing limbs and the energy and the horses and the smoke and the flames and on and on. So this is an example of Orientalism in painting. We have an article from Smart History on Orientalism, which will explain it in a little greater depth. In a nutshell, it's the phenomenon in the West of looking not for understanding of the different cultures of North Africa and Asia in this time of colonialism, not for understanding of the cultures, but for being entertained by them, and particularly emphasizing what is exotic and what is fascinating and what is strange. And there's a lot of sexualization and feminization and a lot of power play involved in these sort of fantastical stories that are spun of the exotic Orient. So that's one of the areas of interest in Romanticism. Take a moment to compare Goya's Executions of the 3rd of May on the left and Delacroix's Death of Sardanapalus on the right. So you can see that both of them are very active, dynamic, and violent scenes, but Goya's is feels much more real, and this is a scene that was real. This was personal and true. In the artist's interpretation on the left, and on the right, it strikes you as more of a sort of a cinematic kind of a story. It's there for bombast and fascination and entertainment, rather than a sense of the reality of violence. The violence on the right, if you notice, it all just seems to be as if it's acted out on a stage. You're not seeing you don't see actual blood, for example, on the right, where you definitely do on the left. Let's move on to the landscape. The sense of violence and emotional expression, and to an explosive degree, takes place in landscape painting, in Romanticism. This painting is by J.M.W. Turner, The Burning of the Houses of Lords and Commons, based on a real life event. But he makes these flames shooting out from the Houses of Lords and Commons shoot up just like astronomically high into the air, exaggerates the dimensions of things and the scale of the space, so that the whole natural world, all this, the sky and the water and the trees and the atmosphere, all seems to be active and alive. Notice also the dramatic brushiness of this painting. We're going to see Turner be a strong influence on the Impressionists, who are going to come around pretty soon. This brings us to the landscape in Romanticism. So during Romanticism, this is the early part of the 19th century, the effects of the Industrial Revolution had led a greater number of people into the cities and had truly stabilized people's lives in Western Europe to a degree that they didn't really have a sense of fear and threat about the wilderness that they had had a couple of generations prior. And they started looking at the wilderness differently. Instead of looking at the wilderness as a place of danger and threat that they had to conquer or escape from, they're looking at it for its for divine messages. They're seeing a presence of the divine in the natural world. And this kind of sorts into a couple of specific types of experience that they're especially. So the sublime and the beautiful are related ways of experiencing the divine presence in the natural world. When we're talking about the sublime, we're talking about aspects of the natural world that are awe-inspiring, threatening, and vast. So the sense of the sublime comes from a sense of feeling small, feeling a sense of awe, feeling a sense of overwhelm. So when you're looking at paintings, the paintings that can be described as having a sense of the sublime are paintings that give you a sense of humanity being small and nature being vast. So you'll see storms, you'll see mountains, you'll see calamities, avalanches, icebergs, and shipwrecks. That's a sense of humanity's. And that's balanced by a sense of the beautiful. Now, you don't always see the sublime and the beautiful happening in the same painting. They're often in separate artworks. But when we're looking for elements of the beautiful in a landscape painting, remember we're talking about it with a capital B as a quality of romantic painting. Not just this is a beautiful painting, but the quality of the beautiful in the landscape in romantic painting. When you're seeing that, you're seeing humanity as part of a harmonious whole. There's a place for human beings in the natural world. So elements of the beautiful are elements that are peaceful, uplifting, and bright. Look for sunrises, flowers blooming in the spring, peaceful scenes that give you a sense of harmony and all being right with the world. The sense of spirituality in landscape painting is particularly strong in German landscape painting. This is an example by Caspar David Friedrich. This painting places a human subject in the landscape as a visual focal point, but he's not facing us. He's facing away from us, looking out into the wilderness as if he is our stand-in. It's asking us to sort of like visualize ourselves in his place, standing on this rocky outcropping and looking out into the mists and the wilderness and sort of speculating on the vast unknown. Where it comes to American landscape painting, this is a period in time, the mid-19th century, where landscape is absolutely crucial in American identity. Because here, and at this time, Americans have embraced this idea of manifest destiny. They've accepted this idea that the American goal, the American purpose is to move westward, to conquer the wilderness, to conquer whatever human beings might be out there in the wilderness, to make the landscape submit, make it our own, and put it into service. And there's a lot of unknown, there's a lot of danger out there in the West that they're moving out into. And why am I talking about this? Well, showing a picture of Niagara Falls. Well, it so happens that in the earlier part of the 19th century, Niagara Falls was seen as a sort of a gateway to the West. They saw this waterfall with all of its majesty and all of its power as a sort of an emblem of all that lay ahead of America in its movement westward. There were a lot of paintings made of Niagara Falls at this time, and this one in particular gives you that sense of the sublime with little elements of the beautiful as a sense of promise. So you can see that there's a rainbow up in the sky, there's a little bit of color in the sky on the right-hand side of the painting. The clouds are sort of parting above us, gives us that sense of a storm that's clearing and a little bit of a sense of promise of calmer things. But closer to us, the vantage point of the viewer is like hovering above the water, and you get this sense of tremendous power and the impact of this of the waterfall. So the sense of the sublime in the landscape is really critical in American landscape painting at this time. And this brings us to Thomas Cole's The Oxbow. Full title, The Oxbow, View from Mount Holyoke, Northampton, Massachusetts, after a thunderstorm. I've got a video for you to watch about this painting, and just to preface that, this Thomas Cole painted a lot of landscapes. This particular landscape was a vantage point that you could actually see, and he worked on this. He made sketches for this painting over a period of 10 years. Historians have sorted this out. He worked on this for a long time. A lot of planning went into this painting. Look at this painting with a feeling of movement from right to left. Okay, there's a sense of dynamic energy moving from right to left, and visualize the sense of American identity and the American sense of progress at this time. On a map of the United States, the East Coast is on the right and the West is on the left. And when people thought about progress and movement westward, it's a movement from right to left across a map. And the movement from right to left across this painting is a movement from what's calm and settled over on the right into what is darker, threatening, and unknown on the left.